Welcome to Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shawna, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you here. And I want to say a very warm thank you to all of you who have responded about beta testing the new app on resilience. So thank you very much. We are so excited. We're looking for a few more people. We're hoping to have it ready for you to test by the end of the month. So let's get into today's topic. We're going to talk about team building today. And you probably think team building, not that exciting of a topic. We get what it is. Usually it's an unpleasant afternoon doing something we didn't really want to do, and we just want to go back and do all our work. Well, I'm here to tell you there are lots of benefits to team building, and I want to outline those for you and what it can do for you. So we're going to cover what it is, why we should do it, and how you can go about doing this with your teams. So let's get into it. The dictionary defines team building as the action or process of causing a group of people to work together effectively as a team, especially by means of activities and events designed to increase motivation and promote cooperation. So it's all of that. It also comes in these 4 flavors that I think are important to distinguish. There's communication focused. So I do a lot of work with the DISC assessment. And with DISC, one of the things we look at is the dominant style, for example, tends to speak in bullets. They don't have the patience or the time to listen to the backstory. It's pretty much like, get it done. And then other types, are more, have more flourish, and they are more wordy, and they like to embellish and have a story. And when those 2 different types have to work together, it can be very frustrating for one another if they don't have the awareness of one another's styles. And so that's an example of a productivity hack, a team building activity. It's communication focused, etc. Next, we have trust building. You've probably all seen the example of the trust fall and all the comedic memes that come with the trust fall. But that's basically like somebody volunteers to fall back and knows that the rest of the team will catch them and they have their back. Doesn't always work that way, but that's one of the famous examples. And then we have problem solving. And this is like when the groups have challenges, escape rooms, things like that, where they're having to solve problems to get out of a situation to make it fun. So we're gaming it. And then finally, decision making. So really looking at, it is a bit of problem solving as well, but it's like, how can we make decisions more accurately, more streamlined, faster, get the right people involved, things like that. So, I often defer to a RACI chart when it comes to something like that. But even building out a RACI chart can be a team building activity. So think about those things as we discuss team building and what it can do for you. So some of you may be thinking, well, why do I want to take the time? Why do I want to spend the money on team building? I've got so much to do. Everybody's overwhelmed. Why would we want to do this? Well, it does improve communication and collaboration. So I can't tell you how many times in a DISC workshop when I've been working with people that they're like, oh, that's why you do that. Now everything makes sense. And they have some lighthearted dialogue about it. And then they honor one another's preferences and tendencies because they have this new awareness and they can adapt their style to work better with others and vice versa. So they're able to collaborate a bit better. If they know one another's strengths, they can say, I'll take this piece, you take this piece, we'll work in parallel, let's meet up. And they trust that one another is going to do what they had promised. We talked about understanding viewpoints. It's like, cut to the chase. I'm going to just fire and then I'll aim, And then there's other personality types that are like analysis paralysis is my middle name. And honoring the requirements that people have to be comfortable with decision making. It does increase innovation because the more that people are in this creative juice mode, the more that they are willing to put ideas out there and not have to protect the idea to be perfect and only their idea, but it's like, hey, I'm throwing raw material out there that we can build something with. And when we have that attitude where we're not trying to protect things, we can take more risks. Jack Canfield talks about it as like the poker theory. If I only have 10 chips, I'm going to be hoarding my chips. I'm going to be very careful with every bet I make. But if he's got 500 chips, he's like, he can bet 10 chips away, many, many times before he starts getting concerned about his chip balance. So when we have a plethora of ideas that have been submitted by team members, we know that things are going to get better. And with that wealth of raw ideas to choose from, we're probably going to come up with a pretty good solution. It does build trust and confidence. So the number one way that we build self-esteem is that we keep our commitments to ourselves. The way that we build trust in other people is when they follow through with their commitments to us, that their actions and their words match. I said I'm going to do this, I do it. And we become far more confident that we can believe them at their word and that our dependency on them, whether it's for part of the process or something like that, we can continue to put forth our effort because we know that their product will be there for us to leverage and move on with. So that's always helpful. And I would say another piece of that is really admitting, I don't know, I need help. Can you look at this with me? I was wrong. Right now I'm going into the Gamache series. I don't know if everybody knows this famous book series, and I apologize, I cannot remember her name off the top of my head. Louise Penny, got it. She has this detective that is kind of like the Poirot of Canada. That's what I'll call him. And the first thing he does with his new recruits is he basically tells them these 4 statements, and he doesn't repeat it again. But they all learn from it. It was like, I need help. I don't know. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I think those are the 4. Anyway, but when we are vulnerable with one another, when we admit those things, it builds trust with other people because it's like, I'm not talking out of my blank and making up stuff and just rambling. And for all of you who've been watching the political process in the U.S. the last few months, it's like every politician is out there just blabbering stuff, making promises, and just going on and on and on about things. It's like, okay, for us to trust them, we need to see words and actions that align. So that's all I'll say about that. So we want to have trust in ourselves, so we follow through with the commitments that we make. So again, that's the basis of our self-esteem. But then having others trust us because we follow through with our commitments to them. And I do want to do another little sidebar here. So Gretchen Rubin, who wrote a book called 10% Happier, I think, she basically looked at all of the studies that Harvard and others had put together on the research of happiness, and then she pursued those activities and measured whether she felt that she was happier. And it was a great project to take on, and she's got a great podcast if you haven't checked it out. But she also wrote a book called The Four Tendencies, and it talks about the kind of personality types like DISC, except when it comes to tendencies. One of them is called the upholder. I'm an upholder. So I am equally likely to make or meet commitments that I make to myself as well as others. My husband is quick to point out that I don't care if I'm inconveniencing other people in order to make my gym appointment or whatever it is, right? And then there's the obliger. The obliger is very good about making commitments to other people, but their gym bag that they so dutifully pack each morning likely goes home unopened with them because they didn't meet the commitments to themselves. They were too busy deferring to other people's needs. Then we have what we call the rebel. So my favorite description of the rebel is, I wanted to do that, but then you told me I needed to do it. Now I don't want to do it anymore. I think both our girls went through that phase at one time. And then finally, there's the questioner. And the questioner is the example of that would be the person who's at a stoplight at 3 a.m. and there are no cars around, and they feel comfortable going through that red light because there's no cars. They're like, why does that rule exist? So they're very selective about following things. They need to know the why. And they ask a lot of questions. And my husband's a questioner. And if someone else asks them a question, they don't really answer it, which I have noticed of late. So kind of fun. But that would be an excellent team building activity for people to do. You can go out online, take the 4 tendencies quiz, and then discuss the differences, the similarities. You'll have bonding, I promise. Very fun. So back on track here. So trust and confidence with one another. The more that we understand, so let me back up. Assessments are fantastic. Some people love them, some people hate them, some people are real junkies. Here's the value of assessments. Assessments are valuable not because of the results necessarily that they provide. It is your thinking about whether you agree or disagree with the results of the assessment and why. That is the beauty of an assessment. So whether it's the DISC, whether it's this 4 tendencies questionnaire, horoscopes, go where you want with it. But do you agree and why? What are the differences? Why do you disagree? That is the value. So that's why assessments can be fabulous for team building, because the wealth is in the discussion and the debate about these things and the nuances and the personal manifestation of each of these things, rather than, just taking a test and having a result and no discussion. What's the value in that? So one of the other benefits that comes with team building that is so valuable is better role understanding, meaning I understand the discrete box that you are in and what you do and what you don't do. That enables better process handoffs. So if I'm doing all the research for our marketing campaign and you're doing the actual hiring for the firm that's going to do it, I understand what you need so I can deliver it to you so you can put out the RFP, that sort of thing. So those things go much, much better. But also, who's not doing something? The white space coverage. So in your family home, for example, You probably have someone who does outdoor activities, indoor activities, but there's a few tasks that you're like, well, what bucket does this really fall into? And it's likely that you don't have a designated person, whether it's formally assigned or not, and those are the balls that get dropped. So we really want to know and identify, previous balls that have been dropped. Why did they get dropped? Was it a gap in assignments? Was it a very unusual assignment? Things like that. Way back in the day, I used to be in support admin of the field that repaired product. And we figured out that of the, I can't remember how many thousands of products there were, of this certain list of products that were not in the top 10, classic Pareto, okay, so I'll say top 20%, 80% of the work was these 20 products. The rest of them, they might see once every 6 months. So they're not as sharp with those because they don't see them that often. Of course, the technicians are brilliant and they know how to do it, and the processes are the same, the steps are the same, but they're less familiar with kind of the nuances of that product because they don't see it as often. And the same thing happens, with home, with business, with things that you do once a year, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that the team can talk about. What are the things that take forever because we only do them once every 6 months? Great discussion topic. And then finally, improved morale and friendship at work, because I have found in all my time coaching teams, facilitating meetings, coaching leaders, when we work on this kind of activity, this is when people have fun and laugh at themselves. They're like, oh, that's why I did that, or oh, no wonder, and they bond over that. Now, I do have a strong preference for this kind of activity to happen face-to-face. I recognize not every team has the budget or the flexibility to meet to do face-to-face activities. I would prioritize it if you possibly can. It really goes a long way, and it really builds friendships at work. So I had a colleague, or a team of colleagues, probably 20 of us. We met maybe once a year. But boy, once we met in person for the very first time after working together for so long, the trust went up, way, way up like that. There's something about that face-to-face, seeing someone eye to eye that really goes a long way in improving trust and friendship, all of that. Now, don't forget, we've talked about the Q12 a bunch of times in the podcast. I'm referring to Gallup's Q12, which is kind of like an employee survey. One of the factors, the 4 factors, is do I belong? And when we investigate that more deeply, that question that applies to it, one of the questions that applies to that is, do I have a best friend at work? And this doesn't mean that they, socialize on the weekends or go to happy hour together or anything like that. It could, doesn't have to. But it's someone that they can go to say, I am having a really hard time, or the boss seems to have it out for me, what's going on, or do you agree with this new direction we're going in? Someone that they feel like they can confide in, someone that's got their back, super important. And often that happens in these team building activities. It's like, oh, I really gel with this person, or I think like they think. It really helps. I remember my company had gone through an acquisition, and of this newly formed team, there was only like 2 of us from the old company that were still there. And then we hardly ever worked together, but then we got together on this project, and she said, oh, I just love how you work. You think through things just like I do. And I was like, well, that's because we grew up in this company together, right? Because, naturally, there's a culture of how you do things in an organization. And if you grow up at the same time under the same leadership, you're you're going to have those same tendencies. And so that natural trust and bond can come from that shared history that you have together, even if it wasn't side by side. So those are some great reasons to take the time, spend the money to really develop, better relationships overall. Now, do I recommend a facilitator? Yeah, and here's why. Because otherwise the facilitator, who's a team member, doesn't really get to participate to the full extent that the rest of the team does. They're too busy keeping time, making sure objectives are met, making sure vendors show up, blah, blah, blah. So if you can delegate the facilitation of these team building activities to a coach, to a facilitator, to me, then that will be the best bang for your buck. You'll make sure that you get out of it what you were hoping to. So, how to do it. So, my theory on this is sprinkle, then soak. If it's a brand new team and you're doing a jump start and you're going to do vision, mission, purpose, values, great. I highly recommend that for a brand new team. But if it's a team that's been going along for a while, you haven't made the best practice of team building, it's kind of new to you, or you just got a budget for it, I wouldn't go hog wild to start with, because you can't build trust overnight. So that's what I mean by sprinkle, then soak. Start with psychological safety, okay? And again, just to recap, psychological safety is I can offer opinions, ideas, etc. without fear of ridicule, retaliation, etc. That the team accepts it as my best intentions. They assume positive intent. They understand that I'm working towards the shared cause, etc. And so therefore, I'm not going to be belittled about it. My ideas are not going to be poo-pooed or ignored, etc. And again, that goes back to Gallup's Q12. Has someone asked me about my opinion? Okay, so again, another important factor there. And the way that I would do that in terms of sprinkling is dedicate 15 minutes of discussion or an activity in your regular staff meeting for a while. Or maybe even have like a 1 hour, kind of staff meeting that's just devoted to this. Get a few of those under your belt before you make the investment for this bigger activity. Now, think about kindergarten. So if you went to kindergarten like I went to kindergarten, mom and dad probably brought you to school the first day because you were scared. You got introduced to your teacher. You got put in a little pod because meeting all 20 plus classmates would have been intimidating at first. You worked in small groups and they had ground rules, right? Here's classroom rules. You still want to have ground rules with your team. You may want to develop them in small pods and do sharing. So remember show and tell. So, you brought your favorite toy. You said, this is my favorite toy. Here's what we do together, Same kind of thing. These little opportunities are the things that are great for teams to begin with. Here's my favorite process at work, or here's what my favorite manager did as a best practice, or here's what my worst manager did. Hopefully it's not the current manager. So small groups can be really effective for that. Now, in my book, Meet Me in the Middle, there are some suggested, at the end of every chapter, there's a suggested list of topics, questions that managers can lead with their team to encourage discussion and build psychological safety. And I always want the leader to go first, because if the leader just says, here's my name and here's how long I've been with the company, that's generally how the rest of the team will share. But if the leader says, I have 2 kids, I'm married, I moved here from so-and-so, I love to play guitar on the weekends, etc., then the rest of the team will reciprocate in kind. They will share the equal amount of detail. So sometimes I have to coach my leaders on this because they're like, well, why is that relevant? And I'm like, so they trust you. So I would say, be the leader, offer that, look at that. Now, it doesn't always have to be talking. It can be activities. So you could break teams into small groups and have them do an activity of sorts. Like, what are some new rules that we should have about new employees coming on? Or what are the rules about asking for a vacation plan? Or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be busy work about just talking. It can be activities that
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shawna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shawnacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shawna Corden.
A dinner cruise, whatever it might be. Think about those activities, and does it really produce the effect that you're looking for in the team? And I would absolutely delegate this to your team as part of the discussion to say, what kinds of activities could we come up with? Now, some of your team members are going to be like super physical and they're like, oh, let's do an Ironman. And other people are like, let's browse a bookstore. So remember that all ideas are valid, and give the team the ground rules about how to evaluate the ideas. Give them a budget, give them a time frame, tell them what they're trying to achieve, and then see what they can come up with that everybody on the team will enjoy or tolerate as best as possible. So, now, how do you know it's working? How do you know that this investment of time and money is paying off? Well, first is observation. If you're lucky enough to be in person, do you get to see people kind of talking at the water cooler about how their weekend went and how the soccer match went and all that kind of stuff, and the development of their kids? Those are really good signs. Now you might be thinking, oh, productivity is going down. But no, that trust is a shortcut and streamlines work getting done. So the more that they have those discussions, the faster regular work goes. So that's the other observation, is shortened task duration. They're getting more and more comfortable with not having to be perfect, asking for help, leaning on one another. Those are great things. Better handoffs, less balls being dropped, more volunteering to help. So if someone's traditionally in charge of, putting together the staff meeting agenda, someone might say, hey, I can help with that. I can get so-and-so to come and be a guest speaker. That's a really good sign that things are on a roll. Less blaming, so less finger pointing, etc. Sharing credit. So instead of I did this, it's, well, I got great help from so-and-so and so-and-so. That's another good sign. Genuine personal interest in one another. So if they take the time to acknowledge birthdays, anniversaries, all that kind of stuff, big milestones, those are all really, really good signs. If you see or observe what you call friendship at work, invitations for things that are outside work, that's fabulous. And then when the team takes it upon themselves to organize activities from within, whether, last week we talked about diversity and inclusion. Maybe they're going to have, a Hispanic meal day, something like that, that's going to be a potluck. That's a super good sign, because it wasn't a directive from you. They decided to do it on their own. So those are all really good signs. And again, with all of these things, you've got increased productivity, better communication, less balls being dropped, and so on. So long list of homework for you, but really to pare it all down, think about what your objectives are for your team building. What are the appropriate activities? So you don't want to do wine tasting if you're looking at improving health and wellness. Okay, so get some alignment there. Do plan regular sessions. Include it in regular team activities. I would say, once a month, every 6 weeks, have an hour or two block for it. Maybe quarterly, do a half day or a full day excursion. Virtual activities, lots of tips online in terms of how to do this, including, which I have not figured out how this works, online escape rooms. You could do virtual coffee breaks. So, hey, 10:15, everybody show up in this room, bring your beverage. We're just going to chat. Or collaborative games. So there's lots of things out there. Google is your friend when it comes to this. After each session, be sure to collect feedback. So we've talked about this in performance management. We've talked about it in a lot of ways. Was the session valuable? Did they get to know someone better? Did they understand someone better? Did they have fun? Did they get to relax a little bit? All of those things. Make sure you understand what worked well, what could be improved. And then finally, measuring the outcomes. So like a Q12, ask, how did this work? Measure the before and after. Some offices I've been in, they've got the little smiley face to frowny face. How's this going? You could measure that monthly with your team. And hopefully, it'll come up with a numerical score. Let's say it started at 2.5. If you're at 3.5 by the end of the year, that's fabulous. Fabulous. So next time, we are going to talk about leveraging strengths. That's one of my favorite activities / soapboxes. So don't forget to join us for that, because you want a team of all-stars. You don't want a team of homogenous people who have let their strengths go to the wayside. Do not forget, we are coming out with our resilience app. And just a reminder, the 3 main factors that influence any change effort on a team: leadership, communication, and employee resilience. We talk about leadership, communication all the time, right? There's tons of articles and tools out on the web. Not a ton on employee resilience, but we know burnout is a serious not only financial factor, but human factor, right? When people have to step out because they're burned out, it's huge. Now, I had one of my students, I'm teaching at Royal Roads this semester, say, well, we don't want this to be an excuse for piling on more work. And I was like, wow. So if the perception is that organizations are only investing in employee resilience just so they can pile on more work, that is not the intention of the app, by all means. What it is as things arise, whether it's, a fender bender, an illness, a parent that suddenly needs a lot more care than they used to, how that doesn't just tank us, that we really can respond with some grace and not react in situations. And so we're going to put you through little lessons. You can take it at your own pace on the app that are activities that you can do that will help build your resilience. So if you'd like to be a beta tester, just send us a note at podcast@shawnacorden.com. And you can just put in the subject line, beta tester. We'll add you to the list. And if you have a team and you want to volunteer your team to do that as well, please give us the number of people on your team. And thank you again for everybody who's already volunteered. Really appreciate it. Don't forget, if you need help with coaching, you can just send us a note at podcast, whether it's individuals, teams, workshops, team building. We are there to help. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. We love that. It helps our show so we can get to more people. If you're listening on your podcast app, a 5-star review also does the same thing for us. So thank you very much. See you next time. Until then, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shawna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shawnacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shawna Corden.